You wake up with a pounding headache, your muscles ache, your throat feels dry. You tell yourself it's probably nothing. You've worked hard this week, maybe you just need rest. But as you stand, pain shoots through your body, then you notice it. A swollen lump beneath your arm. It's warm, painful, growing larger by the hour. Outside your window, the streets are strangely quiet. Yesterday, merchants filled the market. Children chased one another through narrow alleyways. Blacksmiths hammered steel from sunrise until sunset. Today, the only sound is a church bell. It rings once, then again, and again, not for prayer, for another funeral. A horse slowly pulls a wooden cart through the empty street. A tired man walks beside it. His voice echoes between the buildings. "Bring out your dead." A woman opens her door. She isn't carrying a basket. She isn't carrying food. She's carrying her little boy. He hasn't moved all morning. She places him on the cart, turns around, and closes the door without saying a word. No one comforts her. No one dares to get close, because everyone is afraid that simply standing beside her could mean they're next. You don't know it yet, but there's a very real chance. You won't live to see next week. The year is 1348, and you've just become another victim of the Black Death. Imagine Europe just a few years earlier. Life isn't easy, but life goes on. Every morning, farmers leave their cottages before sunrise. Merchants fill the markets with grain, cloth, spices, and wine. Church bells mark the hours of the day. Kings rule from their castles. Children run through muddy streets. Ships arrive daily at busy ports carrying silk from the east, precious spices, gold, and countless other treasures. Europe is alive, but beneath the surface, it is far more vulnerable than anyone realizes. The population has grown rapidly over the past 2 centuries. Cities are becoming larger than ever before. People live shoulder to shoulder inside crowded neighborhoods. Waste is dumped into the streets. Clean water is scarce. Rats are everywhere. To the people of the 14th century, this is simply normal life. No one knows they're living in the perfect environment. For one of history's deadliest killers, far to the east, thousands of kilometers away, something has already begun. Historians believe the disease was caused by a bacterium called Yersinia pestis. It lived quietly among wild rodents across the vast grasslands of Central Asia. For centuries, it remained there. Then trade changed everything. The Mongol Empire had connected much of Asia and Europe through an enormous network of trade routes. Caravans crossed deserts. Merchants traveled for months. Ships sailed between distant ports carrying goods from one side of the world to the other. These routes created wealth unlike anything Europe had ever seen. But they also carried something invisible, something no merchant intended to sell, something no king could tax: death. No one noticed it at first, because death wasn't riding on horseback, it wasn't marching with an army, it wasn't hidden inside a treasure chest. It traveled aboard rats and the tiny fleas feeding on them. Every port welcomed another ship. Every city celebrated another caravan. No one realized. Each arrival brought the plague one step closer. Then, according to many historical accounts, everything changed at a single port. In October 1347, several merchant ships arrived in the Sicilian city of Messina. The sailors weren't celebrating a successful voyage. Many were already dead. Those still alive were desperately sick. Their bodies were covered in dark swellings. Their skin had begun to blacken. Some could barely stand. The people of Messina had never seen anything like it. They ordered the ships to leave immediately, but it was already too late. The enemy had already come ashore, not as soldiers, not as invaders, but as infected rats, and the fleas they carried. Within days, people inside the city began falling ill. Then they started dying. Soon, neighboring towns reported the same terrifying illness. It spread with frightening speed. Every road became another pathway for disease. Every ship became another floating carrier. Every marketplace became another place where death could find its next victim. Europe had faced wars, Europe had survived famines, but nothing had prepared it for what was coming next. You try to convince yourself it's only a fever. You've survived illness before. A few days of rest, some warm broth, and you'll be back at work. But this isn't like any illness you've ever known. The fever rises rapidly. Your head pounds, your body trembles uncontrollably. Even lifting a cup of water feels impossible. Then, the swellings begin. Painful lumps appear beneath your arms, around your neck, and deep in your groin. Some grow as large as apples. Simply touching them sends pain through your entire body. Medieval people had a name for these swellings: buboes. They would become the most recognizable sign of the Black Death. Today, scientists know they formed as the body's lymph nodes fought desperately against the invading bacteria. But in 1348, no one understood what they were seeing. Some believed the disease was God's punishment. Others blamed poisoned air. Some believed strange alignments of the planets had corrupted the heavens. And many searched for someone to blame. The truth remained invisible. The real killer was a bacterium, passed mainly through infected fleas carried by rats, though some forms of the disease could also spread from person to person through respiratory droplets. But no one could see bacteria. No one knew germs existed. They only knew that healthy people were becoming sick, and sick people were dying with terrifying speed. For many victims, the disease moved faster than anyone could imagine. You feel strong on Monday. By Wednesday, you struggle to stand. By Friday, your family may already be preparing your burial. Some victims develop dark patches beneath the skin. Tiny blood vessels burst as the infection overwhelmed the body. To frightened witnesses, the skin seemed to blacken before death. Although modern historians debate whether this inspired the name Black Death, those dark marks became one of the disease's most haunting images. Others suffered an even more terrifying form. The infection reached the lungs. Suddenly, every breath became agony. A violent cough filled the room, blood-stained cloths. Anyone standing nearby risked breathing in the deadly bacteria. Entire households could become infected within days. Some families watched one person fall ill, then another, until no one remained alive. Imagine living in a city where every knock on the door, every cough from a neighbor, every unexpected fever might be your death sentence. That was the reality facing millions of Europeans, and the plague wasn't slowing down, it was accelerating. Village after village disappeared. Monasteries fell silent, markets emptied, roads filled with desperate travelers trying to outrun something. That seemed impossible to escape. But if the disease was spreading this quickly, surely someone could stop it. The doctors certainly tried. What they discovered would become one of history's strangest chapters. You decide to seek help. The fever is getting worse. Your breathing has become difficult. The swelling beneath your arm is now the size of an egg. Your family calls for the town physician. Hours later, he arrives. He's respected, educated, one of the few people in the city who has studied medicine. But as he steps into your room, you notice something strange. He has no microscope, no antibiotics, no understanding of bacteria. Because none of those things exist yet, everything he knows comes from ancient medical texts written hundreds of years earlier by scholars like Hippocrates and Galen. Their teachings have guided medicine for centuries. But against the Black Death, they offer almost no protection. The doctor examines your pulse, looks at your urine, feels the swollen lump beneath your arm. Then he begins treatment. He believes your body is out of balance, so he tries to restore its harmony. Perhaps he orders bloodletting. A sharp blade opens a vein. Blood flows into a bowl. The hope is simple. Remove the bad blood, and perhaps the illness will leave with it. It doesn't. Others recommend herbal remedies. Rose water, vinegar, garlic, ground herbs mixed into strange potions. Some people carry sweet-smelling flowers wherever they go. Others burn incense inside their homes. Many believe the disease spreads through bad air, what they call miasma. If the air smells cleaner, perhaps death will stay away. People even carry small pouches filled with fragrant herbs against their noses as they walk through the streets. For a brief moment, it makes them feel safer, but it doesn't stop the plague. Then come the more desperate cures. Some physicians cut open the painful buboes, hoping to drain the poison from the body. Others apply heated metal, hot poultices, or mixtures of butter, onions, tree resin, and herbs. Every treatment carries hope. Very few bring results. The tragedy is that these doctors were not fools. They observed carefully. They genuinely wanted to save lives. But they were fighting an invisible enemy centuries before science could reveal its existence. Even the bravest physician often became another victim. As they moved from house to house, treating the sick, many caught the disease themselves. Entire hospitals became places where doctors and patients died together. Soon, people began losing faith. If doctors couldn't stop the plague, who could? Some turned to prayer. Churches filled with frightened worshippers begging God for mercy. Others believed humanity was being punished for its sins. Groups known as flagellants marched from town to town, whipping themselves in public, convinced that suffering would earn God's forgiveness and end the plague. Meanwhile, fears searched for someone to blame. Rumors spread faster than facts. Foreigners, travelers, minority communities. Anyone different became an easy target. Across parts of Europe, Jewish communities were falsely accused of poisoning wells. The accusations were completely untrue. Yet they led to terrible acts of violence and persecution against innocent people. When people cannot explain a disaster, history shows they often search for a scapegoat. The Black Death was no exception. As fear consumed entire cities, a desperate question remained. If medicine couldn't save you, and prayer alone couldn't stop the disease, perhaps there was only one option left: run. Leave everything behind, and hope death couldn't catch you. But could you really outrun the Black Death? The rumor spread faster than the plague itself. The next town has fallen. An entire monastery is gone. They say no one survived. Every traveler brings another terrifying story. Every passing merchant seems to carry another warning. Soon, people stop asking if the plague is coming. They ask, how much time do we have left? Your family gathers around the table. There isn't much food. There isn't much hope. Someone finally asks the question everyone has been avoiding. Should we leave? At first, it seems like the obvious answer. If death is inside the city, then surely safety lies somewhere beyond its walls. So thousands make the same decision. They pack what little they own, load carts, harness horses, carry children, and join endless lines of frightened people fleeing into the countryside. But there's one terrible problem. The plague travels with them. Some are already infected without knowing it. Others carry rats hidden among sacks of grain and supplies. Wherever the refugees go, the disease follows. Villages that once felt safe suddenly begin reporting the same mysterious illness. The strategy that was supposed to save lives helps spread the epidemic even farther. But not everyone runs. The wealthy often have another option. If you're a rich merchant or a nobleman, you may own an estate far from the crowded cities. You leave early, long before the sickness reaches its worst. You isolate yourself behind stone walls with servants and supplies. Some survive. Many do not. Because wealth can buy distance, but it cannot guarantee safety. One of the most famous accounts comes from the Italian writer Giovanni Boccaccio. As Florence descended into chaos, he described families abandoning one another. Some people locked themselves indoors, avoiding all contact with the outside world. Others believed the opposite. If we're going to die, they reasoned, we might as well enjoy what's left. They filled taverns, held feasts, ignored every warning. Neither choice guaranteed survival. Fear changed people in different ways. Some became incredibly kind. Neighbors shared food, nuns cared for abandoned children. Doctors continued treating patients despite knowing the risks. Others did the unthinkable. Parents abandoned sick children. Children fled from dying parents. Friends refused to bury friends. The plague didn't just attack the body. It tested humanity itself. Yet amid the fear, a remarkable idea began to emerge. Some cities noticed something unusual. People who stayed away from the sick sometimes avoided becoming sick themselves. It sounds obvious today, but in the 14th century, this was a revolutionary observation. Officials began experimenting with something no European city had ever attempted on a large scale. Instead of letting everyone move freely, they would separate the healthy from the sick. Not because they understood bacteria, not because they knew about fleas, but because experience was slowly teaching them one powerful lesson: distance saved lives. That simple realization would eventually give birth to one of the most important public health ideas in human history: quarantine. The plague keeps spreading. Village after village falls silent. Cities lose thousands of people. Some lose tens of thousands. No doctor can stop it. No prayer guarantees safety. No miracle arrives. But something begins to change. Not because people suddenly understand the disease, but because they begin to notice patterns. One observation keeps appearing. Those who stay away from the sick sometimes remain healthy. It isn't a perfect rule, but it's enough to make city leaders think differently. For the first time, European cities begin fighting the plague not with medicine, but with distance. One of the earliest attempts comes in northern Italy. In 1374, officials in Milan order infected people to leave the city. The decision is harsh. Families are separated. Homes are abandoned. But leaders believe sacrificing a few may save many. It's one of history's earliest organized attempts to contain an epidemic. As the years pass, cities continue experimenting. Some ideas fail. Others save lives. Between the early 1400s and the mid-1400s, 11 cities across northern and central Italy established special plague hospitals. These aren't ordinary hospitals. They're built to isolate the sick from everyone else. The goal isn't to cure the disease. It's to stop it from spreading. Then Venice takes another remarkable step. A city whose wealth depends on trade cannot simply close its ports forever. Ships arrive every day from across the Mediterranean. Some carry silk. Some carry spices. And some carry death. In 1423, Venice creates one of the world's first permanent quarantine hospitals on an island away from the city. Ships arriving from regions affected by plague are forced to wait before anyone is allowed ashore. Passengers, sailors, cargo, everything is inspected. Everything waits. This waiting period eventually becomes known as quarantino, 40 days. The word survives today. We still call it quarantine. The people enforcing these rules don't know about bacteria. They've never seen a flea under a microscope. They simply know one thing. Time sometimes breaks the chain of infection. Other cities continue refining these ideas. During an outbreak in Florence in the 1520s, infected families are moved into simple huts built outside the city walls. Food is brought to them every day. It's a difficult life, but it keeps them separated from the healthy population. By the late 1500s, some Italian cities take even stronger action. Entire neighborhoods are locked down. Travel is restricted. Markets are temporarily closed. Public gatherings are banned. Sound familiar? Centuries before modern medicine, people are already discovering one of public health's greatest weapons: limiting contact. These measures don't eliminate the plague. Far from it. Outbreaks continue returning again and again. But something remarkable happens. The massive waves of death that devastated Europe in the 1300s gradually become smaller. Cities are learning. Slowly. Painfully. One epidemic at a time. The Black Death never truly disappeared. Instead, humanity became better at fighting it. But even as cities learned how to contain the disease, the plague had already changed Europe forever. Not just its population, its economy, its politics, its religion, its very way of life. The world before the Black Death would never exist again. You survive. Weeks pass. The fever disappears. Your strength slowly returns. For the first time in months, you step outside. But this isn't the world you remember. The streets are quiet. Far too quiet. The market where hundreds once gathered now has only a handful of merchants. Entire rows of houses stand empty. Doors hang open. Windows remain shuttered. No one is coming back. The smell of smoke has disappeared. So has the laughter. Even the church bells ring less often, because there are fewer people left to bury. Across Europe, the numbers are almost impossible to imagine. Modern historians estimate that between 30 and 60% of Europe's population died during the first great wave of the Black Death. In some towns, nearly everyone was gone. Some villages vanished completely. Their fields were never planted again. Their homes slowly collapsed into the earth. Nature quietly reclaimed what people had built. At first, it feels like the end of civilization. But history has a strange way of rebuilding itself. With so many workers gone, everything changes. Before the plague, a poor farmer had little power. If he demanded higher wages, someone else would gladly take his place. Now, there is no one else. Landowners desperately need workers. Fields still need harvesting. Roads still need repairing. Animals still need tending. For the first time in generations, ordinary people can negotiate. Many workers demand better pay, better living conditions, greater freedom. Some landlords refuse. Others have no choice. They agree. In many parts of Europe, survivors suddenly become more valuable simply because they are alive. Governments panic. Kings fear rising wages will weaken the old social order. In England, laws are passed trying to freeze wages at pre-plague levels. Workers are forbidden from asking for more money. But enforcing those laws proves nearly impossible. When labor is scarce, people know their worth. The plague has done something armies failed to do. It has shifted the balance of power. Even religion begins to change. For centuries, the church had been the center of everyday life. People believed faith could protect them. But during the plague, Priests died alongside everyone else. Churches filled with desperate prayers. Yet the disease continued. Some people's faith grew stronger. Others quietly began asking dangerous questions. If God was protecting the faithful, why were so many faithful people dying? Those questions wouldn't disappear. They would echo through Europe for centuries. Artists changed too. Paintings became darker. Stories became more haunting. Skeletons appeared in murals. Death became a constant reminder that life could end without warning. The Black Death didn't simply kill millions of people. It transformed the way people thought about life, work, faith, and death itself. Europe would recover. Cities would grow again. Trade would return. New generations would be born. But the world that emerged after the plague was not the same world that existed before it. And despite everything humanity had learned, one unsettling truth remained. The Black Death wasn't finished. Imagine it's 20 years later. You're older now. Your children have grown. The empty fields are green again. Markets are busy. Churches are full. Life feels normal. Then one morning, a traveler arrives with terrible news. A nearby town has reported plague. At first, people refuse to believe it. Not again. It can't be. Surely history couldn't repeat itself. But it does. The plague returns. Then it returns again. And again. The first Black Death was never the final chapter. It was only the beginning. For the next 300 years, Europe would experience wave after wave of plague outbreaks. Some were small. Others devastated entire cities. The difference was, people were no longer completely helpless. Every epidemic taught new lessons. City leaders became faster, more organized, more cautious. When rumors of plague appeared, officials didn't wait until half the city was dying. Ships were inspected before entering port. Travelers were questioned. Families showing symptoms were isolated. Homes were marked. Entire streets could be closed. The methods were harsh, sometimes even cruel, but experience had taught a painful truth. Act early, or bury thousands. Venice became one of the greatest examples. Its quarantine stations watched every arriving ship. Crews waited offshore. Cargo remained untouched. Weeks passed before anyone was allowed to enter the city. Trade slowed, but lives were saved. Milan adopted strict household quarantines. If one person became infected, the entire household could be confined. Florence moved many infected people outside the city into isolated huts, where food was brought to them each day. These weren't perfect solutions. Many still died. But compared to the catastrophe of 1348, the outbreaks became more manageable. The plague hadn't become weaker. People had become wiser. Slowly, generation after generation, communities learned how to recognize danger, how to respond, how to break chains of infection. Centuries later, scientists would discover bacteria. Microscopes would reveal the invisible world. Doctors would finally understand what medieval physicians never could. But long before modern science, human observation had already saved countless lives. One epidemic, one mistake, one lesson at a time. Eventually, the great waves of plague faded from Europe. Not because humanity defeated the disease overnight, but because better sanitation, improved public health, stronger quarantine systems, and changing populations made massive outbreaks increasingly rare. The Black Death didn't simply end. It slowly lost its grip. Yet even today, the bacterium that caused it, Yersinia pestis, still exists in small animal populations across parts of the world. It survives. Modern medicine can usually treat it with antibiotics if it's caught early, but the organism itself never disappeared. The greatest pandemic in medieval history never truly vanished. It simply became a shadow of what it once was, and perhaps that's the most unsettling part of all. History isn't only something that happened. Sometimes it's something still waiting quietly in the background. Let's go back to where this story began. You wake up in the year 1348. You have no antibiotics, no vaccines, no hospitals as we know them today. No one understands bacteria. No one knows how the disease spreads. Your entire world is built on fear, rumors, and hope. If you're lucky, you never encounter the plague. If you're unlucky, everything depends on chance. Was the flea carrying the bacteria? Did your neighbor become sick yesterday? Did the merchant arriving from another city unknowingly bring death with him? Did you leave the city too late? Or did you simply happen to be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time? For millions of people, survival wasn't determined by courage, or intelligence, or wealth alone. Often, it came down to luck. The Black Death reminds us of something deeply uncomfortable. History isn't only shaped by kings, generals, or famous leaders. Sometimes, history is changed by things too small for the human eye to see. A tiny flea, a single bacterium. Together, they altered the course of civilizations. The plague reshaped Europe's population, changed its economy, transformed its labor system, influenced religion, inspired new approaches to public health, and forced societies to rethink how they responded to disease. Many of the ideas we now take for granted, isolation, quarantine, contact control, public health measures, all have roots that stretch back to those desperate centuries of trial and error. The people of the Middle Ages didn't understand germs, but they learned, one epidemic at a time, one heartbreaking mistake after another. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson the Black Death leaves behind. Humanity doesn't become stronger because disasters happen. Humanity becomes stronger because it learns from them. The plague claimed millions of lives. Families disappeared. Entire villages vanished from history. But the knowledge gained through those centuries helped future generations face new epidemics with greater understanding. Today, when we read about the Black Death, it's easy to think of it as a distant chapter in a history book, a tragedy safely locked away in the past. But history is never as distant as it seems. The choices made during those terrifying years, the birth of quarantine, the importance of public health, the value of scientific understanding, still shape the world we live in today. So, could you have survived the Black Death? The honest answer is that no one can know. You could have been the wealthy merchant who escaped to the countryside, the doctor who stayed behind to treat the sick, the mother protecting her children, the sailor unknowingly carrying the disease to a new city, or simply another ordinary person trying to make it through another ordinary day. Before history changed forever, the Black Death was one of humanity's darkest chapters. But it also revealed something extraordinary. Even in the face of unimaginable loss, people adapted. They observed, they learned, and they rebuilt. Because history is not only the story of those who died, it is also the story of those who survived and made sure the world kept moving forward. So, could you have survived the Black Death? The truth is, probably not. Not because you weren't strong enough. Not because you weren't smart enough. But because in 1348, survival often had nothing to do with courage. It depended on where you lived, who you met, which ship entered your city, which flea bit you, and whether fate happened to choose your street next. History often celebrates kings, generals, and great battles. But sometimes, the greatest battle in history was simply staying alive. The Black Death killed tens of millions of people. It emptied villages, changed kingdoms, redefined economies, inspired the first great public health measures, and permanently altered the course of European history. Yet even in humanity's darkest moments, people refused to give up. Doctors continued treating patients, even when they knew they might die. Families cared for loved ones, even when hope had almost disappeared. Cities learned, adapted, and slowly built a future from unimaginable loss. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson the Black Death leaves behind. Civilizations are not remembered because they never faced disaster. They are remembered because they found a way to rise after it. Today, the streets of medieval Europe are silent. The plague carts are gone. The church bells no longer ring for thousands every day. The fires that burned the belongings of the dead have long since faded. But the choices made during those terrible years, the lessons they learned, still shape the world around us. Every quarantine, every public health system, every attempt to stop an epidemic before it spreads carries echoes of those who lived through the Black Death. History is never just about the past. It's a warning, a lesson, and sometimes a reminder of just how fragile civilization really is. So the next time you hear someone say, "That could never happen again," remember this. In 1348, millions of people believed tomorrow would be just another ordinary day. They had no idea. They were living through the beginning of one of the deadliest disasters in human history.